Look, as you know, this week has marked, depending on international timelines, the second anniversary of the horrific, absolutely horrific October the 7th attacks on Israel into areas adjacent to Gaza, into what's called the Gaza envelope, by thousands of Hamas, Islamic terrorist fighters, supported by civilians, by people dressed up as journalists, by people who supposedly were health workers, in some cases by members of organisations like UNRWA, which are United Nations organisations. They came into Israel and they slaughtered and they butchered. They went to a music festival where they slaughtered 365 young people as they gathered to enjoy themselves and listen to music. They used paragliders, an amazing John Minto's outfit, the Palestine organisation, had pictures up of paragliders on their website this week, saying, wonderful things about people in paragliders. So we've had the second anniversary of what has resulted in a conflict, an existential fight for Israel to literally survive in the face of terror. Bogus claims of genocide, bogus claims of famine, and young stupid people around the world donning tea towels and standing up for hate and for butchery. But I got a feeling this year, on the second anniversary, that public opinion, most certainly here in New Zealand, has turned, and the real genuine horror of what happened October the 7th is being acknowledged, and the brutality of Hamas is being acknowledged. I wondered if our Jewish community felt the same. So we're joined now from the Israel Institute of New Zealand by David Cumin. David, nice to talk to you again. How are you?
You too, Sean. I'm all right. How are you?
Not bad. Was this a better anniversary? Has the temperature changed around this issue?
Well, if we take a short-term view, yes. The announcement of Winston Peters at the United Nations was sensible and measured and statesmanlike, and a relief to most sensible people, I think. On the other hand, the response from the Islamist and far-left groups in New Zealand has been that of essentially violence, his home being attacked, and his staff has been harassed, and the amplification of, as you just pointed out, support for terror. And so I think most reasonable people are seeing things more clearly. The problem that I have is I think most reasonable people have always seen things reasonably clearly. It's the media.
Yeah, I was going to say half of this problem has been mainstream or legacy media.
Mm.
And I looked, there's a story abroad this week on the internet. Someone tried to run an ad which had a candle and the yellow ribbon basically marking this anniversary. It was not a controversial decision. I can't remember quite what the wording on the advertisement were going to be. I understand that was submitted to major newspapers in New Zealand and they refused to run it.
My understanding is that NZME was happy to run it, but that Stuff decided not to run it. And the reason that Stuff gave was that October 7th is a particularly sensitive time, as it marked, quote, the anniversary of the start of escalation of armed hostilities between Israel and the Palestinian territories. That language is very similar to language that the BBC has recently apologised for. But I don't think that Stuff will find it in themselves to apologise for such.
Yeah, they really have. They've been appalling. And they've also published advertisements from the Palestinian Solidarity Network of Aotearoa, John Minto's mob.
Yes, and not just benign adverts that compare Israel to the Nazis.
Yep, that's right, and use the word genocide and famine, which are being quite clearly being misused. I was interested in Simon Court's attempt in Parliament to make sure that the word genocide wasn't misused. It fell on deaf ears in the end, didn't it, that appeal?
Well, it was always going to fall on willfully deaf ears. And one of the great disappointments for me has been the way that the Labour Party in New Zealand has handled this issue in general. I would have thought that they would want to distance themselves from the violence and extreme antics of the Greens in particular, but also Party Maori. But we have an election and they need those parties for coalition, and so they're being dragged ever more to the extremes, unfortunately.
Yeah. Look, back to the events of this week, which have been pretty bizarre, with one New Zealand being involved, and this actress, Acacia O'Connor. No one has asked her, she won't come on the platform for some strange reason, but I want to ask her, why did she get this $33,000 payment from a Give a Little page, and where did that money come from? Do you have any idea about that, David?
I don't. I think it's a great question, though. And again, I hope that the well-meaning Kiwis that dug into their pockets to contribute to a cause that they thought was important now understand that there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation that's being spread, and maybe they were had, and maybe they should reconsider.
I wonder what Acacia needed the $33,000 for, though.
Well, ostensibly it was for aid, wasn't it? But what we've seen with many of these scams, I'll call them, is that it's not really about aid. It's all about propaganda and feeding the disinformation machine. And the flotilla is the epitome of that.
Yeah, and I see Will Alexander, the guy who does the keto hunger strike thing, he's going to go and join a flotilla too. We've got another couple of idiots doing that. Yeah.
It's a real shame. And I was very pleased to hear both Winston and David Seymour telling these people what they think of them and their antics, and that the New Zealand taxpayer is not going to fund their adventure.
David, what are you hearing from home about, or from Israel about peace and the peace deal proposed by Trump? Is there any progress there?